Good morning, I think it is. It's 11, considers morning. Good morning and welcome to a webinar from Linköping University. Today we are going to learn a bit more about Science for Sustainable Development, which is one of our two-year master's programs. I'm here with my two guests, Sepe and Joshua. I will let them introduce themselves in a minute. But first I want to go through a few housekeeping things. This webinar is being recorded, so you can view it at a later date on our program homepage or our webinars page. Please put your questions in the Q&A section. We'll be going to that one to answer your questions later. There's also a chat function that you can use to say hi to each other and where you're from. If you're watching this recording, you can actually ask questions in the Q&A as well, and they will be forwarded to us here at the university. This conversation will be about 20 to 30 minutes. You're going to learn a bit more about the program structure, what it's like to be a student, and then we're going to cut the recording. So if you're watching this recorded version, it will only be about 20 to 30 minutes. And then we will open up for questions for those of you who are viewing this live with us. My name is Therese. I'm a communications officer at the university, and I'll be your moderator. And I'm going to let my guests introduce themselves. Would you like to?
Sure. I'm Sepe Yektas. I'm the program coordinator for Masters in Science for Sustainable Development.
Thank you.
Yeah, Joshua Joseph Idiong from Nigeria, and a second-year master's student in the Science for Sustainable Development program.
Thank you. It'll be really good to hear both of your perspectives. I think you will learn a lot from hearing from both of them. Let's start with talking a bit about the program. Why do we offer this program?
Sure. So our program this addresses sustainability solutions and the solutions that are needed for future social development, and also solutions for tackling today's and future environmental and sustainable development challenges. And as these solutions or the challenges that we are dealing with when it comes to sustainable development, they are very much characterized as multidisciplinary and multidimensional. So meaning that if we want to tackle those challenges, then we need to deal with them in interdisciplinary by interdisciplinary approaches, by bringing in different competences and different disciplines all together to deal with those problems.
Why did you choose this program, and which discipline do you come from?
Yeah, so I have a background in environmental technology. Yeah, but while I was still studying, I started my business. I run a processing company where I work with smallholder farmers to help them increase their productivity. But then I faced some sort of challenges because I had a knowledge of environmental issues. But then in my business, I was struggling to balance sustainability and profitability. So, because there was a concern about people wanting to buy what is affordable, and what is affordable was not necessarily kind of sustainable. So I wanted to understand, is there a way I could run a business sustainably at the same time still mark up with profit? So I thought about a career in sustainability consulting, not just to help my business, but to help other businesses, and that's why I applied for the program, to broaden my knowledge and understand how I can apply this in businesses in particular.
I think that's extremely valuable and kind of topic. I mean, there's so many things in the world at the moment that are, there's this discussion of, are we really paying what the product is worth, or what the real cost is? Yeah. So I think it's a really good perspective. Did you the aim of the program then is to bring these multidisciplinary kind of subject areas into one, or how?
So I think Joshua made a good point. So in order to educate and train sustainability expert, so we need a specific academic settings where different disciplines are meet each other in that setting, and that's what our program will do. And our program is offered by the Department of Thematic Studies at Linköping University, which actually has a long history of interdisciplinary research. It goes back to 1980 that these types of that problem-based tackling challenges by combining competences and disciplines has been a tradition in our program.
So you would have, for example, engineers working with social scientists or urban planning, and for example, to achieve a common goal.
Exactly, and that's the way the whole institution's structure looks like. So we have researchers which are also teachers of the program with different backgrounds, different disciplinary background, but also those that are trained in interdisciplinary environment.
Was this new to you? This kind of working in an interdisciplinary setting?
Yeah, I think sort of it was kind of new to me, and I wanted to experience it, and that was like because I spent a lot of time like on the website to quite understand the program, and I saw that I'm someone that I like to learn new things. So I felt not just learning from the curriculum, the caliber of students that are going to be there with their experiences, I would need that perspective, because working as a sustainability consultant, you work with different businesses, different industries, and so this program would give me a touch into what the mining industry could look like without even mining, because I work with a student coming from that background, and that was what was very valuable for me in the course of this program.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So, I mean, I think this is very beneficial. I mean, the benefits to society. How does this program kind of contribute to that?
So, first of all, the contribution in the form of educating sustainability experts, which will then enter the society, but also even the training itself is, the education itself is form which is problem oriented and socially relevant in the topics that are brought up in the program. So meaning that the actual social challenges are worked through in the program by the students, and also we have teachers that working in the or they're teaching in the program, so they are working with the state-of-the-art research in the field of sustainable development, which that will then come into the education. So while we are dealing with current and future social challenges, so that will actually, the process is also included in the education. So not only addressing issues, but we're also training sustainability expert, and that would be the contribution to the society.
That'll be good. And you gave me quite a good kind of introduction to the slide that I'd like to share. This, you were talking about the courses are actually contributing, and they're contributing to this aim of not only creating a better world right now, but the process of looking to the future. So the program is 4 semesters. First semester and second semester. So the first year, you've done them in kind of bluish grey. Are they mandatory, all those courses?
That's correct. So the first and the second semester, there we have what we call the core courses in the program, and those are mandatory courses for all the students who study our program. And they have there's a certain logic in their order. Simply is that the students which comes with different backgrounds, academic backgrounds, so they are introduced to the field of sustainable development as an analytical or scientific topic. And that will mainly be the goal of the first course in the program, to introduce this topic academically, sustainable development academically, to students that have diverse academic background, and there we take it from there, and we then focus on for different important issues that are our main challenges of the today's society. Examples are using resources, how we can use resources sustainably. So about environmental changes, so how our environment generally changes, and then how the environmental issues, the policies, and can be steered and can be governed. So then we have the course in, for example, environmental politics and governance. Then we move on addressing one of these environmental issues, or which is our social challenges, which is the climate change problem. So we will have a course where we're looking to climate science, but and processes and dynamics, biogeochemistry behind the climate changes. And thereafter, we will talk about about the transformation. So we need in our society, we need to go through a transformation from this from the today's practices to more sustainable practice in the future. So how this transition would like. And then we will address management of the resources. What is the sustainable resource management? And the last course that we call it Designing Environmental Studies, that will focus on then giving students tools and on how you can then approach the environmental sustainable development questions for example, designing project and for doing research in the topic.
Okay. What was your experience of the first year? Because now you're in your third semester, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you started. I mean, were you familiar with these subject areas, or did you find that these first two courses were really, set the ground for you? Or?
Yeah, I think sort of a bit familiar, but not really with the the learning method. I wasn't familiar with the learning method because coming from Nigeria, learning method was actually quite a bit different. But I felt it actually prepared me for what was ahead. Like the first course talking about critical perspective, it made us to not just look at things from the surface, but trying to question, and which I think is one of the things that has to do with you need it for research, and you need it even to develop sustainable solutions, because you need to question if there is a product you want to push out, you're going to ask some certain questions. What would be the future requirement for the raw materials? What could be the possible effect it might have on the environment? What would be the effect on customers? I think these are different. Using this critical perspective was setting the page going forward. I also think like other programs that had to do with our changing planets and trying to see how we can use GIS tools to kind of make some measurement and analyze presence of like carbon storage in different areas. So those tools are tools that we can use in the future, both in a place of work and also in research if you want to further in academia. So I felt the first year was preparing us for going forward, which is part of like the research work and also the internship that you might want to face later on in the course of the program.
Okay. Did you have a favorite course
Did
in your first year? A favorite course? Was there one that particularly you were like, I really enjoyed this?
Yeah, in my first year, one of my favorite courses was the transformation, like societal transformation, right? Because in that course, I was able to. So we had an option of picking case studies from the internet, but also had an option of designing your own case study. So I was able to link what I studied with solution back in Nigeria related to my business. Designed a case study which I worked on and how I can approach that, because I wanted something concrete that even after my program, I could still implement what I did as part of my coursework, right? So it was interesting for me, and that was one of my favorite courses because it looked at sustainability in three different perspectives. So the political sphere, the personal sphere, and the practical sphere. But most times, if you look at like you have in COP27, a lot of conversation is going to be about the practical sphere. What are we measuring? How are we keeping data? But then are we looking at how does it affect culture? How does it affect personal lifestyle? Because you're saying change this, but if their lifestyle, they have built a lifestyle based on culture that we need to eat meat, then you can't just put them to eat plant. Yeah, so we need to look at sustainability also on this personal perspective, which was very important for me during that course.
I think that sounds really useful, because I agree with that. Getting people on board, and you do that by understanding the culture.
Yeah.
Sounds like a really good course. And now you're in your third semester. So if we look at the third semester courses on the screen. So, and this is a lot more research skills oriented.
I would say the third semester is electable courses. So what we would encourage our students simply to do, that they try to think which types of profile based on the information that they get in the during the education, but also based on their experiences and academic background, which types of profile they would like to build up. which they think is useful for their future career. And third semester is mainly designed in a way that gives the possibility to students to customize those profiles. So the courses that you are here, so for example, research skills that you see, this is a kind of small project courses that you could choose the topic together with the supervisor, work on a topic and work on a kind of shorter version of a bigger project, or for specific research questions, a specific project. You could also use it to learn new skills. So as you mentioned, so I would like to learn more about the GIS. So then you could take these courses and just focusing on learning hard skills about how to deal with the GIS, how to deal with the data, and the list goes on. So that will simply depends on what the students choose. But also, as our students have the possibility to take courses in other universities as well, and meaning that if some students come to me and say, "Oh, I found a very nice course in a specific topic in another university, I think it's relevant," then the student gets the possibility to study that. And then include that credits into the program.
Does it have to be pre-approved universities or one of our exchange?
The only requirement is that we have a dialogue, so we make sure that the course is relevant to the education. So the requirement is that we kind of need to have this dialogue to kind of make sure that the course is relevant to the education and can be then included in the program. There's also another possibility in the third semester at the students can do a study abroad. So we have a couple of students that do exchange for the whole semester in another university in another country. And we also have, as you see, some defined courses that we offer, like visualizing environmental sustainability challenges, or sustainability in urban renewal. So there are also the specific courses, classroom courses that we offer. And not the least, so we have the possibility that the students do internship, as what Joshua, for example, is involved in right now. And the internship can be a whole semester, as is reflected by the internship, which gives 30 credits, or it can be a shorter internship, which is half a semester. Yeah.
And what are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing an internship, but I think I was able to explore the different options, and I think I really commend the program for that, because I started by applying to looking at the possibility of doing a coursework in Copenhagen Business School, and I reached out to them, and I discovered, I had to pay like a tuition to do that. So I tried another option, which was looking at how to do research skills, and I reached out to one of my and then we had a conversation around that possibility. But at the same time, my major interest, based on like what I said, based on my profile, my future profile, being a sustainability consultant, was more about getting an internship, right? And though it was kind of a tough search for me in Sweden, since I don't speak Swedish yet, though learning. But then I was able to get an internship through LinkedIn, and now I'm doing my internship with Inclusive Business Sweden in Gothenburg, and I work with them with. So a very interesting internship actually, because we're designing, like trying to ensure a sustainability assurance system for jute farmers in Bangladesh. And as a cause of that internship, I'll also be traveling to Bangladesh to work with those farmers and get data and see how the current sustainability assurance system can be adopted to smallholder farmers, and in a way that because companies now are being, like in Europe and all that, we have the new standards that have been set in place in the EU for measuring impact, would require companies to show that, there is some sort of ESG, the social compliance, human rights are being taken care of, even at the bottom of the value chain. And that's why this project is very important. And so far, it's been an interesting internship journey.
And do you stay in Gothenburg then, or do you?
Yeah, I work virtually. Yeah, but then I'll be traveling also for the Inclusive Business Forum, which is next week. In Gothenburg. So, but most of the time I work virtually from Linköping.
Okay. Oh, it's really good that you have the opportunity. How many students take the opportunity to do an internship? I mean, on average, percentage-wise.
So it varies year by year, I would say. But I would say this year, if we put the internship and research skills, it's more than 50 to 60% of the students that enrolled kind of decided to do these courses. But we also have students that has traveled abroad, so it will again varies depending year by year, depending on what the students would like to do. Simply.
So it's a bit of a mix, but the opportunities there. And then we have the fourth semester. I don't think we need to see the slide for that because there is just one option really. So that's the project, the master's thesis, which is the entire semester.
That's correct. So the master thesis course that will have a duration of a whole semester, around 6 months, but it starts in January until June, where the students will work with their thesis project. And there they have individual supervisors, and the thesis topics as well can vary a lot depending on the topic that the students choose, but it's also very common that the students become involved, for example, in ongoing research projects that at the department, at the Linköping University or other universities as the part of their thesis, or they become involved in projects that are offered by some companies or by other organizations.
And is it then beneficial to have done an internship and to be able to do your...
So what we actually try to encourage our students is that when I will actually introduce the master thesis course at the second term to kind of encourage the students that when you decide your electable courses, you can think of your thesis project. Would you like to have those courses as a way to build up your skills and competence to carry out a specific research or gain knowledge about the specific methods that you could then use for your master thesis? So this becomes a process so that the students start to think about learning and performing the project as a process, which actually starts quite early after the second semester, this process of thinking. But the course by itself practically starts at the fall, exactly.
So what about your thesis? Have you got a plan in your head? I mean, how far have you got in your thinking?
For my thesis, I think I have like weighing two options now currently. I've applied to quite some few companies that are offering some internship program via LinkedIn also, and also through Graduate Land. I've tried to look for some companies and apply to them. But then as my own second option, looking at I work in the palm oil value chain, and there is currently in the EU, I think that was like a few months ago, they passed the deforestation-free law against certain products, which palm oil was one of them. And one of the ways to solve that problem, especially for smallholder farmers who don't have the capacity, like bigger companies, is to explore how we can use blockchain to ensure traceability in the value chain, to show what is being done on the ground, and so that the buyers can actually be assured that, oh, this product is deforestation-free. So it's an option I'm looking at to explore if I don't get an internship with a company during the course of my master's program.
Okay, sounds really interesting, and I mean very, topical and current, and definitely, it's not just hypothetical. I think what you do. I'd like to learn a bit more about your experience of being a student here. How has it been? You mentioned before that it was very different from Nigeria.
Yeah.
I mean, how has it been different, and how has that been?
Yeah, I think I was exposed to research, let put it that way, and though quite interested, I had to read a lot of articles, lots and lots of articles. I'd spent like the past so many years reading personal development books, leadership books, business books, and then switching back to read topical issues in sustainability, has to do with climate and all that. Was quite a big shift for me. And then because weekly we had to, for the first few courses, we had to send in our reflection papers, which is actually very helpful because it helps you to look in depth into the issue and try to bring in your own perspective and thoughts. But then it made you read a lot of articles because you can't write this reflection paper without reading the articles. Yeah. So it was a way of getting me to read those articles, which was quite interesting. Also, I can remember one of our lecturers saying that the program is more like a 40 hours full-time job. So it's required that you need to put in quite a lot of time. But I think beyond the coursework, personally, I think I've been explored a lot of options in my student life. So the proximity to Linköping Science Park was actually quite interesting. Now I sit on the board as a student board member of Linköping Science Park. Quite interesting, and work closely with companies. So there's this close opportunity to engage with companies. Being in Linköping, I've also explored kind of starting a business in Sweden, and I had an engagement with Linköping Innovation, LIU Innovation. Also quite interesting to have to prepare some pitch deck during that phase. Although I stopped due to the level of my coursework, a lot of things I had to bridge that a bit. But I was also able to experience that. Also, I've been able to work part-time with Unitalent, which is also linked to the university, as a student consultant on several projects. Working projects has to do with apples, and then I've also worked part-time first time. I like to explore different things.
How do you have time? You must be very, very structured.
Yeah, I because I know I have just 2 years for the master's program. I have to maximize the opportunity. I have to meet people, right? So the second one was with, I think it calls Collectivate, KK. Is more like the student union kind of restaurant or something, yeah. And so working there, you have to experience the student life, because without even going, but you see it happening like on Wednesdays evening and all that, which is also quite interesting. And then everything is kind of close to the students. Like we have M Shop close to Reed Sally, where most students live, so it makes it quite convenient. So I think it's been interesting living here. And I enjoy the student life.
Do you live in a student corridor?
Yes, I live in a student corridor.
So the student corridor is basically, it's a corridor with 8 rooms coming off it. So you have 8 students living together with a common kitchen and living area, but you have your own bedroom and your own bathroom.
Yeah.
So you have your own reasonably sized space. But
Sure.
So you can be sociable, but also, be on your own.
Yeah, be on your own and meet people who are quite interesting.
Okay, so the course itself, has it been different in the sense that what I hear from a lot of people is, the group work part. Is that a feature of this program as well? That there's a lot of work that you do with, so you're assessed individually, but as the work that you've performed is as a team.
Yeah. I think that happens quite a lot, and so it helps you build your emotional intelligence, because you need to work with people a lot as a team, and the other person's performance is also important to you, because you want to pass the course, and you're graded as a team. So you want to put in your best, at the same time you want to encourage the other person to put in his or her best. And I think it's a very crucial skill for even the workplace, where a lot of employers are looking at what is your ability to work with a team, and we have that in different courses. And then it has a lot of presentations where we need to do a presentation to as a team. I remember a course we had to do we had to choose a particular segment of people to present to, and we choose primary school children. We had to come up with a story and then act out the story. It was interesting working as a team on that, changing ideas, and then still trying to work towards a common goal, which was actually very, very interesting. So, and also I think study visits was also something that was also very interesting during the course, where we had to visit, I think it's the biggest biogas plant in Sweden, Tekniska. And we learned a lot about the processes and the value they had into Sweden and the world as a whole, and that was also very interesting value during the course of the program.
So it's a completely packed program, and I'm kind of hearing, so you need to be structured and ambitious, and I think you're very ambitious, but with all the reading and writing, there's a lot of, you need a good level of English as well. I mean, even if you do match the 6.5 IELTS or 90 TOEFL, you still need to be comfortable reading a lot in English. What else would you say is the kind of necessary skills to have to be on this program?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, good English skills is very, very, very important. And then I think research skills, which you can learn in the program, and the university also offers that guidance where you can reach out to counselors to learn how to build your research skills. Also very important, because there is zero room for plagiarism, right? And you have to be sure that you're citing these articles rightly, and you make that there are things I didn't take note of, like was in terms of how you extract maybe a picture from a particular research, and you want to do that is either you add something to it or you change it, unless you need to maybe write to the person for permission before you can use that sort of information. Was also something I got to know as part of the program. So these are certain skills that, but I think to encourage you all out there is that these are skills that are learnable. You can learn them, right? You can prepare yourself in the course of the program. And apart from the skills, I think a very good personal computer is also very important, even if you can access computers in university, but because a lot of your work is going to do with writing, saving, uploading documents, and that is one thing I think it's very important and valuable.
Would you have anything to add?
I think Joshua covered it all, I would say, but I can just almost say in the same direction that so the program is what we call is very much student-centered, and we have the active learning model for the education. So, and that means that then it's demanding, it requires reading, participation, group work, and then motivation and time management, and those parts are very important. And those are the skills that we are trying to even work with in parallel with the ordinary curriculum of the courses. So we will, for example, we have a series of seminars, what we call portfolio, where we specifically address those skills that are important for managing the courses: time management, self-reflections, and documentation, and those type of working with CV, thinking about how to define
it really
profiles.
sets you up for the future, in that sense.
Exactly, and that's the type of sessions that we start in the beginning of the program, and that actually follows with all courses throughout the program to kind of build up and more reflect, and then look back what you were thinking last year. So how my skills look like now after 1 year.
A lot of reflection. And I think it's important to mention that even though you did manage to do all this and all the extracurricular and work part-time, most students tend to focus on the program full-time, and it's something that we advise against is coming here and thinking, well, I can work my way through college. It's not, you should, if you do find a job and you do have time, I mean, good for you, but it shouldn't be something that you have to rely on. I think I need to mention that.
I think that's a very important point. I think what Joshua mentions as well. So there are mainly student activities that are kind of connected to sort of work as well. So those types of things you mentioned, but if you are thinking that you could in parallel with the study, you can do like full-time or half-time job. I don't advise that neither, because the program requires full-time attention. Simply.
And then you also need to sleep. And hopefully have a bit of fun. And have a bit of fun every now and then too. We're actually going to go into the questions, because I think we've spoken for over half an hour. But before we do, I'm just going to say goodbye to those who are actually watching this recording, because we do switch off. But a quick overview of where you can get hold of us. Have a look at our Instagram page. Linköping University is run by our students, so you get a really good insight into what life is like once you're here, both academic and student life. Same thing with the international program students at LIU blog. They give you really good tips on, well, not just being here and being a student and living here, but the journey here, applying, accommodation. Is a really good place to have a look, to kind of get ahead of the game in a way, to be prepared. Also say, when you get an email from us, you can hit reply to that email. That's a really good way of getting a quick answer from us. Otherwise, have a look at the program page and the contact us option there. It's the same as hitting reply. It goes to the same place, but that's the quickest way to get a response from us. And you can also pop your question in the Q&A box, which I think is below us. So to those of you who watched the recording, thank you very much for your time, and goodbye.